Hello everyone, um, welcome back. This is a very complex tutorial. While in the previous tutorials we've been learning from basics to more complex animations and objects and how to edit objects and how to add materials and textures. Here we're going to learn about the mechanics of multiple object animation. Which we're going to do is called a hierarchy, and we're going to create a hierarchy of objects and we're going to see how they interact and work together. So there is a related tutorial document, and it's very important that you follow it step by step. Hierarchies can be tricky in that if you make a mistake at any point, you end up with a hierarchy that's wrongly defined, and as a result, when you try to make an animation, you end up with an outcome that is not what you were expecting. And the main reason why this could happen is the strata, the layers, the levels of your hierarchy are not put in the right order, or if the object themselves that you're trying to animate cannot be animated the way you want them. So for example, if you have another object here and you're trying to have one moving perpendicular and it's going across this object, it can't in the real world. Of course in 3D Studio you can have it going across, but that would be wrong. That will create an unrealistic so you have clash between the mechanics and the real world, the animation and the mechanics, or the animation and the real world, where you end up with something that animates, but it animates with one object going across the other, which in the real world doesn't happen. So, and I'm following here more or less the related document to this tutorial because it's very important to go step by step so that you don't make any mistakes. What we're going to do is we're going to create a hierarchy. We're going to create, we're going to select part of the hierarchy. We're going to use that to define and modify and help build an animation that makes sense according to what you want to achieve and according to the shape that we have, and to make it very obvious. So we're going to do a little bit of theory, and I will start by explaining things again from a very simple perspective. What you need to understand is there are different parts, and there's different things that happens in the way you animate things. But the best example is to look at, for example, a door, and the door is essentially made of two parts. So there's two objects. There's a door frame and there's a door, and so what you need to do is you need to link, and the door rotates according to certain can only rotate around the hinges. So there's the frame, there's the door frame inside, and it can only rotate according to the two hinges onto which it is attached to the door frame. So what we're talking about here is a linkage between the door and the door frame via the hinges, and what we call is that we have a child and we link a child to its parents, and we call that parenting in 3D Studio Max. So the frame is a parent of the door, and so the door is a child of the frame, and the hinges are the connection between the two. So the door will be the child of the hinge, and the hinge will be the child of the frame. The frame is the parent of the hinge, and the hinge are the parent of the door. So what moves is the child, and what is moved, what is used as reference for the movement is the parents. So the frame is the parent and the door is the child. Okay, that's something we have to bear in mind all the time. The frame is the parent, it's the reference, and the door is the child, it's the moving object. So there's also things that are important in that, in this concept, is that we have pivot point. Pivot point is where the rotation occurs. And to give you a simple example, when you have a wheel, the pivot point is obviously at the center of the wheel. In the case of in the door, there are two pivot points at the top and at the bottom. They're basically where the hinges are. So the hinges are the pivot point for the of the door in relation to the frame, and it's done via the hinges. So what you also need to know, so we're talking here a little bit of background in terms of theory, and then we're going to start working in more details. So what's important to realize is that from an animation point of view, don't use groups, use links. Okay, so you do linking and put the parents and child, and don't do grouping. That's not a good idea to do an animation. Why? Because linking allows you to fully control how the individual part move around, and you can animate each one with certain constraint with absolutely no problem. While grouping, it turns several objects into one object, and then it becomes a single object, and then you do animation editing. You can really apply the same animation, the same settings to the whole group, so because it becomes one single object. So you're only applying the whole animation. You can only apply it to the whole group, and that's where the difference is. So you want to, if you want to animate one object which is within the whole group, then you can select the object, do the animation, then go back. If you want to do that, it's better to do it with, but as I said, and I will repeat that, it's better to do it using linking. And you can also use linking to get hierarchies, which then allow you to have children inheriting transform command from their parents. So the command that you do to the parents, the transform that you do in the parents, especially when you do animation, for example, you move things around or whatever, is then inherited by the children. So if your door frame is a parent and the door is a child, you can move the child according to the parents, but you can also move the whole door frame, and the child, which is the door in this case, will move along the door frame. So I know it's a bit doesn't make, because you could say, why not use anchoring, why not use reference, why use this child parents linking, all that. It's a bit confusing. The wording is a bit confusing. I'm not the one who came up with it, it's Autodesk. But you get familiar with it, and before you know it, you'll have no problem using it. So what's important is when you have an object that's part of a hierarchy, you select the object, you animate the hierarchy, and then you link your object using the and so you have to link and then unlink to make sure your child object is animated or not animated according to the rest of the hierarchy. Anyway, doesn't matter what I'm all saying here. I'm just telling you there are a lot of what the gist of what you need to understand here is not so much the details of my explanations. The most important point that I'm trying to make here is there are many details, there are many ways of doing things, and the way you do them, the chronology, the order on how you do them will have an effect. So if you do A and then you do B, will be different than if you do B and then you do A. So that's why it's very important to follow this tutorial step by step and repeat this video many times and just review what I'm doing, do the same and repeat, and etc. So the first thing we need to do is to open the existing file, and then we're going to go from that and we're going to start doing something. So let's open the file. So we go to file, we open, and we choose the file that we opened a few minutes ago. We downloaded a few minutes ago. So it was in documents, and it was here, and we need to download the robot arm start. So that's the file that we need to download. We open that, and we should have in front of us a robot arm. So so I want to change that to so we're going to use the system unit scale because we want to use metric. And when you move out, here you have your robot. So you should all have a robot in front of you. And what we're going to do next is we're going to start doing the animation. Right, so editing and creating a hierarchy and the tutorial. So that's where you should all be at this stage, and you're going to start in the next file on doing, sorry, in the next tutorial, we're going to carry on with this. So thank you for your attention so far.